Okay, a little bit confusing, but what we do know is that this part here is going to be the highest part of the route plan. So let's look just below at the highest part. Well, the highest part, as you can see, 2 meters is the biggest number, and that's orange. So this bit here, the launch pad, has to be the tallest bit. So we know that has to be the launch pad. Now this part here is up and down. So if it's up and down, we need to look for somewhere on here which is up and down. Well, here alternates in colours. And if we see these two colours, there's a slight change, 1.5 and 1. So this one here has to be the 1.5 bit. So this bit, and then it goes back down to 1. So 1 meter, 1.5, 1 meter, 1.5, 1, which is shown by here. The 1 meter increases, then up onto the higher one, then back down, then up onto the higher one, then back down, before they then go back down to the bouncing area A, where there's a natural decrease in your height. So this is the walls up and over. Well, you start off at bouncing area A, so the route we do is we start up on bouncing area A. There's a gradual steep incline, so we'd be going up the ramp. Then when we arrive, we're onto the launch pad. Then when we get to the launch pad, it's across to the bouncing area B, where we start to decline down again. So that's here where we just have a natural decline, and then it's up, up and down, up and down. So that has to be straight down here before we finally finish off back at bouncing area A. It's fine if you've done that as a full arrow. For this one, I'm going to use our previous to help us. We know we start at A, so that's here. We go up the ramp, which was the same on the last one, so we know it's got to be identical here. However, when we go up the ramp, we're then only briefly on the launch pad, but instead of going to bouncing area B, like we did on the previous one, we're going down to here. So this is where there's going to be a slight change. So we can start the beginning off as it was before, with a slight bounce. Then we know we had a perfect straight line in which we then peaked at the tallest part. But now this time is slightly different. We don't come back down and gradually stop. We're actually going to go to the tallest. This is the taller one of the two. So if we use our previous one, that's actually this part here. So it's down to a steeper bit. Then it goes back down again, because that's to here, which is actually this bit. Then it's back down again. So back down to bouncing area B, like so, where we have another gradual decline. Before then we go for the tunnel. Well, if we use our graph on the right, the tunnel is 0.5, so there's not much higher. So the tunnel is going to be up and across before we come back down and finish here. So a little bit tricky, but anything within these guidelines will get you the 4 marks. Obviously, it's per section is worth every mark. Okay, so for this one, if each letter is the same price, we know it doesn't really matter which letter it is. All 3 of them cost £58.50, 3 letters. Make a note of that there. So we now want to find out the cost of 2 letters. Well, because we know they're all identical in price, we can start by doing £58.50 divided by 3. gives me an answer of 19.5. So that's £19.50. Get 1 mark for that. Now there's 2 of them, or for dividing by 3 you get 1 mark. Now £19.50. Well, doubling it is where we're going to get our second mark, because we now have 2 letters, which is £39, which is your final answer of £39, because there's only 2 letters needed to spell the word me. Okay, now the hint here saying it's not 800 grams, you've got to remember you're going to have jam inside the jar, but you're also going to have the weight of the jar as well. So quarter may equal 300 grams and half is equal to 400 grams. Although it's half full, what we can actually do is now find out how much a jar will actually equal. So how many of these quarters get you up to a half? Well, a quarter plus a quarter will equal a half. So 1/4 of the jam has got to equal the difference between here. So if 1/4 of the jam is equal to 100 grams, we know that the jar must be 300 grams take away the 100 grams. So if I subtract them, an empty jar has got to be equal to 200 grams. So now if we know 1/4 of just the jam, so we're just focusing on the jam, this bit here is the jar. Now focus on the jam. If 1/4 of it is equal to 100 grams, like we just said up by here, then 4/4 is going to be 100 times 4, which is 400 grams. So a full jar has got to be the 200 and the 400 together, which gives me an answer of 600 grams. A little bit tricky. Okay, because we know that they're all regular hexagons, they're all, and you can quite clearly see they're all the same size. So how many sides does a hexagon have? Well, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. The perimeter is the distance around the outside. So if the distance around the shape, the blue one, is 120 centimeters, we can divide that by 6 to find out the length of one of them. So one of these has to be, every single one of these is always going to be 20. Well, if we know all of them are 20, now we want to find out the total length in red. Let's count how many are there. So we've got 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to start by here, so I know where I've come back to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So 18 times by 20 is going to give me 360, because there's 18 sides and each one is 20 centimeters. So my final answer is 360 centimeters. You get 1 mark for noticing 20 centimeters is the size of each one. Okay, so for this one, you've got to try and find the link between the number here and then the workings. So when we had the number 4, we had 3/4. It was 1 less. When we had 14, it was 13/14. So again, the number on the bottom is always the number in the bottle, and the one above it is always 1 less. So for this one, 25 on the bottom, 24 there. So for now 16, it's going to be 15/16 times by 100. So 15 divided by 16 and then times by 100 gives me an answer of 93.75, which is fine. You can have that if you want, or you can round it to 94%. Either or is not a problem. Now for the next question, it says, what number on the front will block 90%? So we know that 3/4 here is 75, 93, 13, 14. So we know we've got to go slightly smaller. So I'm going to start with 10. So So it's a bit of trial and error. 10 over 11 times by 100. And then I'm going to decide whether I go higher or lower. So 10 divided by 11 times by 100 gives me an answer of 90.9 recurring. So that would be too big. So I'm now going to drop below to 9 and 10. Again, the number on the bottom is the one we're changing, 9 over 10, which is going to give me, should be 90 smack on, but let's double check on our calculator anyway. And that gives me 90 dead on. So what number would be on the front of the bottle? It would have to be the number 10. Bit of trial and error, but eventually you would get there with that. Could also try 9 on the bottom if you're unsure, but what number? 90 will get you that smack on. Okay. Molly wants to print lots of copies of photograph onto this paper. It's 297 by 210. She can print them this way, 50 and 40, or she can print them the other way, 40 and 50. This will remain the same size rather, or same face. Which way will give her the greater number of photographs? So let's have a look. We've got two different ways, so we're going to have two different methods. So method number 1 is where we're going to start, and that is when they are 50 by 40. Well, if it's 210 and 40, it's 297 going up. So a couple of ways you could do it. We could do 297 divided by 40, or we could keep adding it on. So I'm going to do it with a little bit more logic, so I think some of you may have used the same method. So 297, 210. Well, if we're going to go with method 1, where they are 40 and 50, you can only fit 50, 100, 150, 200. So you can only fit 4 across. And then we're going to times that by however many we can fit up. So if we're going up in 40s, it's going to be 40. And then another 40, so that's 80, 120, 160, 200, 240, 280. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 4 times 7 is going to be 28 photos. That's way 1. Now way 2. Again, the numbers remain the same, 210, 297, but it's the other way around now. So this time it's 40 and 50. So if they're 40, we can fit a few more in there. So that's 40, 80, 120, 160, and then 200. So that's 5 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Times by, well, 50 going up. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. You can't go above because that'll take you slightly too far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is going to be 25 photos. So which one was? We don't need to explain how we've done it here in our workings. So which one will have the greater number of photos? It's way 1, or the first way.